The candle on my dessert burned lower and lower. Vanilla and melted sugar filled the air. Around me, couples laughed softly over wine glasses. Someone at the next table clinked champagne and whispered, "Happy birthday." My phone buzzed. "Working late. Happy 33rd." I stared at the message for a long time. 8 years of marriage. And this was the celebration. I told myself not to overreact. Deadlines happen. Meetings run long. Then the server approached with the bill. He didn't place it down immediately. Instead, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Ma'am, your husband is here." My chest tightened. "He's in private dining room number 5 with someone." The restaurant suddenly felt too small. Have you ever felt your entire reality tilt in a single sentence? I stood up, and I walked toward room 5. Private dining room number 5 was at the end of a narrow hallway. The carpet muted my footsteps. Soft jazz drifted from the main dining area behind me. My reflection looked pale in the framed mirrors lining the wall. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I simply walked. Have you ever noticed how your body goes quiet when your mind starts racing? 8 years of marriage replayed in fragments. The early mornings when we drank coffee together in silence. But it felt comfortable. The first apartment with peeling paint and borrowed furniture. The way he used to reach for my hand automatically while crossing the street. Somewhere along the way, that habit disappeared. Work became heavier. His phone became more private. Late meetings became routine. I asked once gently, "Everything okay?" He smiled too quickly. "Of course." And I let it go. Because part of me didn't want to know. Because marriage, I thought, meant patience. As I reached the door marked 5, I paused. The muffled sound of laughter filtered through. Not loud, intimate, familiar. My hand hovered over the handle. What if I was wrong? What if this was business? What if the server misunderstood? Have you ever tried to protect your heart by inventing softer explanations? I turned the handle slowly. The room smelled like expensive wine and truffle butter. A small round table, 2 glasses, a candle between them, and my husband. He was leaning forward, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Across from him sat a woman. Her hand rested lightly on the table, and then she lifted her face fully toward the door. That's when my stomach dropped, because I knew her. It was my cousin, Lena, the one who had helped me pick out this dress, the one who had texted me that morning. "He better make tonight special." For a moment, no one moved. My husband's smile froze halfway. Lena's fingers curled slowly around her wine glass. The candle flickered between us, like it wasn't sure which direction to lean. Have you ever felt your heart crack, but your face stay calm? I thought you were working late," I said. My voice didn't tremble. That surprised even me. My husband stood up quickly, knocking his chair slightly off balance. "It's not what you think," he began. The oldest sentence in the world. Lena looked at me, then at him. Her expression wasn't guilt. It was calculation. "We were just talking," she said softly, "on my birthday, in a private room, with wine already half gone." A guy stepped further inside and closed the door behind me. Not dramatically, just firmly. I looked at the table. 2 desserts, one with a candle. Have you ever noticed how details tell the truth before people do? My husband ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I knew too well. "I didn't want to upset you," he said. "By lying?" I asked. Silence. Lena shifted in her seat. "It started as advice," she said carefully. "He needed someone to talk to." Advice? About what? About me? I felt something colder than anger settle inside my chest. "How long?" I asked quietly. Neither of them answered immediately, and that pause told me everything. Have you ever realized the betrayal didn't begin tonight? It just revealed itself tonight? My husband stepped closer. "We didn't plan this," he said. "It just happened." I studied his face. The man who once memorized my coffee order. The man who forgot my birthday dinner. Or maybe he didn't forget. And maybe he chose differently. Lena finally stood. "We should leave," she murmured. But I didn't move. I looked at the candle on the untouched dessert. Still burning. Still waiting. And suddenly the humiliation wasn't the worst part. The worst part was understanding that this hadn't been spontaneous. It had been building, quietly, behind my back. They left the room before I did. Not dramatically, not running, just quietly gathering their things like people who didn't want a scene. I stayed behind. The candle had burned almost to the base now. Wax pooled unevenly beside the fork. I sat down in the chair my husband had just occupied. The cushion was still warm. Have you ever noticed how betrayal doesn't explode at first? It settles? Small memories began rearranging themselves in my mind. The late-night texts he used to angle away from me. The way Lena started visiting more often, just to check in. The afternoon she insisted on dropping by when he was home early. The pieces hadn't looked suspicious individually. Together they formed a pattern. And the pattern wasn't new. I thought back to last month, Lena complimenting him a little too easily, him laughing a little too freely. I remember feeling something shift inside me then, but I ignored it because I trusted her, because I trusted him. Have you ever convinced yourself that discomfort is just insecurity? The server knocked gently before entering. "Are you all right?" "Oh, ma'am." His voice was careful. "Yes," I said. And strangely, I meant it. Because the worst had already happened. The illusion was gone. When I walked out of the restaurant, the night air felt colder than before. My phone buzzed. A message from my husband. "We need to talk." Another from Lena. "Please don't misunderstand." Misunderstand. I stood on the sidewalk, reading that word over and over. There was nothing unclear about what I had seen. 2 glasses, 2 desserts, 1 lie. And suddenly, something inside me went still. Not broken, not furious, just clear. Have you ever realized that clarity can feel heavier than heartbreak? I didn't call him. I didn't reply. Instead, I got into my car and drove home. The house looked exactly the same as it had that morning. The hallway lamp still on. The framed photos still smiling. But something invisible had shifted. I walked into the bedroom. His side of the closet felt smaller than I remembered. I opened a drawer and began folding his shirts. Not angrily, methodically. I didn't cry while I folded his clothes. That surprised me the most. The cotton of his shirts felt ordinary between my fingers. Blue, white, gray. The same rotation he wore to the office every week. The same sleeves I used to smooth down before dinner parties. Have you ever reached a point where emotion feels less urgent than clarity? I placed each shirt neatly into a suitcase. Not thrown, not crumpled. And just arranged. 8 years is a long time. But it's not long enough to excuse dishonesty. My phone vibrated again. "Please answer," he texted. I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The screen light reflected softly against the dark window. I typed slowly, carefully. Separate account, lease agreement, consultation. Not dramatic searches, just practical ones. Have you ever noticed how strength begins with logistics? By midnight, the suitcase was zipped. By 1 a.m., I had transferred my portion of the savings into my own account. Not to punish him, not to retaliate, just to protect myself. He came home at 1:37. The front door opened quietly. He stepped inside like someone entering a hospital room. I was sitting at the dining table, the same place we had celebrated birthdays before. He looked at the suitcase first, then at me. "It didn't mean anything," he said. I didn't argue. "Then why hide it?" I asked calmly. He didn't have an answer that sounded believable. It was emotional. He tried again. I felt disconnected. You've been distant too. Distant. I thought about the nights I waited up, the birthdays I planned, the dinners I arranged around his schedule. Was patience distance? Have you ever been blamed for reacting to someone else's withdrawal? I've been present, I said quietly. You just stopped looking. That silenced him. He sat across from me, the same chair he used every morning for coffee. And suddenly I realized something. I wasn't angry at Lena. I wasn't even furious at him. I was tired, tired of adjusting, tired of minimizing small betrayals to keep peace, tired of convincing myself that discomfort was normal. Are you leaving? He asked finally. Yes, I said. Not permanently, not yet. But emotionally, something had already stepped away. Have you ever felt yourself detach before the relationship officially ends? He rubbed his face with both hands. I made a mistake. No, I replied gently. You made a choice. There's a difference. He looked like he wanted to argue, to explain, to soften it, but he couldn't, because we both knew the truth. I stood up. I'll stay with a friend for a while. The house felt echoing now, not because it was empty, but because trust had left. And once trust leaves, everything sounds louder. I stayed with my friend Mira that night. Again, her apartment smelled like lavender and clean linen. She didn't ask too many questions. She just handed me a blanket and said, "Sleep." But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the restaurant scene over and over. Not the laughter, not the wine. The way he looked comfortable. That part stayed with me. Have you ever realized the betrayal isn't the lie? It's the ease. By morning, my phone was full of messages. From him, from Lena, from my mother. Because apparently, like Lena had called her first, the story had already begun rewriting itself. She said, "It was a misunderstanding," my mom texted. She said, "You overreacted." Overreacted. I sat up slowly in Mira's guest bed. What exactly had I imagined? The private room, the candle, the lie? Have you ever noticed how quickly people defend what benefits them? I didn't reply to my mother. Instead, I opened my email. There was something I hadn't told him yet. 6 months ago. Yeah, I had started a consulting project. Quietly, independently. I didn't want applause. I wanted stability. The contract had just been renewed that morning. 3 years. Financial security. Complete autonomy. I stared at the confirmation letter and felt something unexpected. Relief. Because suddenly I wasn't negotiating from fear. I wasn't staying because I couldn't leave. Have you ever felt the shift when dependency disappears? He called around noon. I answered this time. Can we fix this? He asked. His voice sounded tired. Fix what? I replied gently. Our marriage. I took a breath. You didn't come home to celebrate my birthday, I said. You chose someone else's company instead. It wasn't serious, he insisted. That's what makes it worse. Silence. I could hear traffic in the background on his end. Maybe he was parked somewhere. Maybe he didn't want to be home alone. Lena said you've been cold lately, he added. Cold. I thought about the way I waited up for him, the way I adjusted dinner times, the way I swallowed my suspicions to avoid conflict. If that was cold, what did warmth even mean? Have you ever been told you changed when you were simply protecting yourself? I didn't become distant, I said calmly. I became observant. That sentence lingered between us. He didn't argue. Instead, he tried something softer. I love you, he said. Maybe he did, but love without respect feels unstable. And respect had cracked. I need space, I told him. How long? He asked. I looked out the window at Mira's quiet street. As long as it takes for me to know I'm not second choice, I replied. And for the first time since that candle burned down in the restaurant, I felt steady. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was deciding. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. No screaming, no dramatic confrontations. Just distance. He moved into the guest room. I returned home but lived differently inside it. We passed each other like careful neighbors, polite but cautious. Have you ever stayed in the same space with someone and realized you were already somewhere else emotionally? Lena stopped calling entirely. My mother sent a few neutral messages, testing the temperature. I kept my responses brief. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was recalibrating. Every morning, I made coffee only for myself. The small change felt symbolic. I no longer adjusted the sugar for someone else's taste. In the evenings, I worked on my consulting contracts. My laptop became my focus, not his mood. There's something powerful about redirecting energy back toward yourself. Have you ever noticed how clarity grows in silence? One night, he sat across from me at the kitchen table. I ended it, he said quietly. I looked up. With her. I nodded. Not in approval, just acknowledgement. What now? He asked. It wasn't defensive. It was uncertain. And I realized something important in that moment. The real break didn't happen in private dining room 5. It happened when I stopped competing for my own husband's attention. Have you ever recognized that sometimes you don't fight, you withdraw? I'm not interested in proving my worth, I said calmly. If I stay, it won't be because you chose me after someone else. It will be because I choose this. He swallowed. That distinction mattered. Weeks earlier, I would have begged for reassurance, asked questions, demanded explanations. Now I just observed. And the power dynamic shifted quietly. He began coming home earlier. He started asking about my projects. He noticed things. But attention given after exposure feels different. It feels reactive. And I wasn't reacting anymore. One evening, I walked past the hallway mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked broken, but because she looked composed. And have you ever surprised yourself with your own calm? The marriage wasn't officially over, but something inside me had settled into independence. If I stayed, it would be from strength. If I left, it would be from clarity. Either way, I wasn't the woman sitting alone at a restaurant waiting for crumbs of celebration. And that realization changed everything. 3 months later, we sat across from a counselor. Neutral room, soft lighting. No raised voices, just questions. What do you want? She asked me gently. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was layered. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want humiliation for him. I wanted to never feel optional again. Have you ever realized that dignity matters more than apology? He spoke first. I took her for granted, he admitted. I didn't think she would ever leave. That sentence landed heavier than any confession, not because of what he did, but because of what he assumed. I would stay. No matter what, that night in the restaurant had shattered that illusion, and once someone sees you walk toward the door calmly, they never look at you the same way again. Weeks passed. Conversations deepened. Truth surfaced in layers. Loneliness, ego, comfort, familiarity, not excuses, just explanations. But explanations don't erase impact. Have you ever noticed how trust doesn't shatter loudly? It thins quietly. One evening, he asked me something different. Wake, if you hadn't walked into that room, would you still be here like before? I thought about it, yes. I would have kept waiting, kept adjusting, kept minimizing. And that realization felt almost scarier than the betrayal itself, because the biggest shock wasn't seeing him with another woman. It was seeing myself clearly. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. In the end, we didn't rush a decision. We rebuilt slowly, carefully, with new boundaries, separate accounts, a clear expectations, radical honesty. But here's what changed permanently. I no longer measure my worth by how well someone chooses me. I measure it by how well I choose myself. Have you ever felt that shift? That moment when heartbreak turns into self-respect? On my 34th birthday, he didn't text working late. He was home. Dinner was simple, no restaurant, no private rooms, just us. But this time, I wasn't waiting for proof. Because whether the marriage lasted forever or not, I knew I would be fine. The woman who walked into room 5 wasn't weak. She was brave enough to see the truth. And the woman who walked out of that restaurant? She never sat in the dark waiting again. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt like an afterthought in your own relationship, pause for a moment. What would you have done? Would you have knocked? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have walked in calmly? Like this video if you believe dignity is louder than anger. And tell me below, what does self-respect look like in your life? Because sometimes the real birthday gift isn't flowers. It's clarity.